Welcome to the panel, where smart founders discuss the realities of building better products and a better life. I'm Justin Jackson, the co-founder of Transistor.fm.
And I'm Brian Castle. I am building instrumental components for Ruby on Rails.
And in a moment, you'll hear our conversation with...
I'm Jordan Gall, the co-founder of Rosie at heyrosie.com. We are an AI agent that picks up the phone for small businesses.
All right, so your good friend Jordan... It felt like I was, in between two long lost friends.
It was great. Jordan, if you don't know, Jordan and I co-hosted a podcast called Bootstrapped Web for I think over 10 years, and we actually just wrapped that up at the beginning of this year. So this was really fun to get back on the mics today with Jordan and you, and it was a great conversation.
There's so much here that we talked about that I've wanted to talk about, and there's things that I think we need to have Jordan back to continue talking about. A few off the top of my head that were interesting to me was he said at the end of the episode, he said, we invested a bunch in ads and we told the agency to run these ads as if they were to consumers because he was trying to reach this broad group of small business owners, like tradespeople, painters, carpenters. And there's something about that I've been thinking about forever, which is we often think about B2B or B2C. And I think in a world of small businesses, like if your target is small businesses or prosumers or creators,
they're still people.
They're still people. And you kind of have to advertise to them like you would a consumer. So that part was really interesting to me. Is there anything on the top of your head?
Yeah, for sure. The thing that was interesting to me is what we spent probably the first half of this episode, how, unpacking how Jordan is thinking about his personal content, whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, and a unique approach to that, and how you and I think about our content. And again, and this is a running theme here where Jordan is operating in a company that is, VC funded and trying to move fast and putting a lot of dollars and salaries behind these efforts. Yeah. And I think about it like, how can I do a similar thing with the bootstrapper's mindset? Hiring an assistant, maybe using some AI. And I like to think about the mechanics of like, what can we put together here and what's actually feasible in terms of time and energy and funding. Because it's like, I think all three of us have a lot of the same goals. When it comes to like, why do we podcast or why do we make videos or, why do we create content and why do we want to grow our audience? But I think all three of us are operating in different structures on how to do that. Like a VC startup, a well-established SaaS in your case, in my case, more of like a bootstrap company, kind of steady, sustainable sort of thing.
Yeah. And if folks are listening to that part in particular, and you've got ideas on how you could achieve what Jordan is doing with a bigger agency and more investment and how that could translate to small bootstrappers, we'd love to hear from you. All the links are in the show notes. Yep. But yeah, I think we should get into this conversation.
Let's roll it.
You've been on the podcast guesting spree.
I have.
You are for a while there. It was like, wow, everybody's got Jordan on the podcast this week.
Yeah, what is he promoting, a book?
Right? On the book tour.
I don't even know.
I'm guessing that was on purpose.
It was on purpose. It started by accident, and then it was on purpose, which feels like a lot of what I do in general. Like, I found this thing. Let me go explain how smart I am and how I found it. When in reality, I started to, Brian and I did a podcast for a very long time, and then we stopped. And I was like, I have podcast latent energy that needs to be released in some way.
Yes.
So I started talking to people, and then I started thinking about my own podcast, and then I was like, I want inspiration, I want practice, and you know what? You know what I think I'm after?
What's that?
So a lot of what I'm doing around podcasting right now is thinking about when I open Spotify. Yeah. What am I looking for? What do I want to listen to?
Oh, this is interesting.
And I'm really using that as my guiding principle because at first I was like, what is going to bring in the most customers for Rosie?
Yeah.
And then I was like, I know what will do that, and that does not sound like something I want to do for the next 2 years straight.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what would be better if I could find something that I could authentically enjoy doing for the next X number of years and not think about it that way.
Yeah.
And then you're faced with another problem of, well, okay, what would you do if you actually wanted to create a podcast that you liked and wanted to listen to? What would you do? You guys just did it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's key in starting this type of like a podcast, right? Like I really don't think the idea of like let's start a podcast as like a lead generation play directly for a product. I don't think that ever works.
Yeah,
You know, it's just so much more about like brand and long term story and personal investment of your listeners and your story and all that. You know?
Yeah, it's easier to justify though the time and energy and money.
Yeah.
If you're like, well, this is a thing for the business, and okay, what's best for the business? If you think about it that way, you can end up doing that, and I think that actually works really well for a lot of businesses. But if authenticity is the key thing in podcasting that grows an audience and like love between audience and hosts, then you need to be authentic. And if I'm being honest with myself, I don't want to do an interview of our ICP every single time for a year straight. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you take me through, like, when you open Spotify, what are you looking for when it comes to episodes? Like you said, that was what inspired you. So what is it? Like when you open up Spotify, what are you
after
looking
like
for?
a few weeks of soul searching through this, where am I actually on it?
Yeah.
I want a hang with people that I like talking about things that I care about.
Okay.
That's it. I don't want value. I don't want the latest trick. I don't want some breakthrough. I don't want advice. I don't want inspiration. I don't want any of that. I want to hang out with people that I like, talking about things that I care about.
Yeah.
And the talking about things that I care about is pretty wide. If it's interesting,
Yeah.
I'm in. It's not like it needs to be on my, approved list of things I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've wanted the same thing for so long too, and I did sort of that with my Open Threads podcast, where I tried to bring on friends and talk about other things other outside of business, and that's gone like in and out as like the sort of like the fun hang podcast. But
I mean,
we sort
that's
of had that a bit too. You know?
That's what you guys had with Bootstrapped Web. I think Bootstrapped Web, for me, it had that element. Like it felt like I'm hanging out with Jordan and Brian every week. But the other job to be done for me was I'm walking from my house down to the office, and I'm like, I want to hang with people, but I want to get inspired. I want to get like fired up. And hearing you two had another element that was, I don't know if I could even articulate it, but it was just having you talk through your businesses and your challenges and what you're thinking about in an authentic way would fire me up for the day. And so for me, it's not just the hangout, because there's some episodes where it's like, I mean, you like everyone. I don't know if you guys saw that, but there's a PHP hangout in New York, and so Ian published it on his feed, and it was like on 4 different feeds, and I listened to it, and it was really enjoyable in the sense that I felt like, oh wow, it feels like we're at a conference and we're all hanging out, but it was missing that element of this fires me up. This makes me want to go to work and do some shit. Like this is like what I'm looking for is that oomph to get me going. I don't know if you can identify with that. And what would you say that is? Like, what's the difference between just a good hang? There's also this other piece for me, which is a little bit tactical. Jordan, you were saying maybe you don't want the tactical, but for me, I want a little bit of something, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like that's what happened with Bootstrapped Web, which, I think Jordan and I both loved doing it for so many years. But probably for like the same reason, right? Like I feel like we enjoyed it just as much as the listeners did for a lot of the same reasons. I think it had that element of hang, but it was also like, what do we like to talk about most of the time? And it's most of the time we're talking about business.
Yeah.
Like that's what's kind of most interesting to us on any given day. And that's, I mean, we covered, occasionally we veered into like non-business stuff, but like for the most part, it's like, well, what's on our minds today? It's what we're working on, you know?
Yeah. Oftentimes before the episode started, I would look at my to-do list and I would look at the previous week's calendar. What did I actually spend time doing? What's on my to-do list to think about and accomplish? what meetings that I take, what ideas that sparks. So it's really like it's like a to-do list podcast. Like what am I just working on right now? What's on my mind?
Yeah.
One of the things is you can't have a podcast that satisfies everything.
No.
Right? You can't be inspiration and knowledge and tactics and like, okay, so you're going to have to forego some things.
Yeah.
I think for me, around Bootstrap Web, our aperture was tight around business. And I want to, if I'm being authentic to myself, I want to open that up a touch.
Oh, interesting.
Into current events. I mean, maybe like a little bit of an all-in type of like hey, things going on in the world, and they impact business. So if I took it through that filter, that's what I want to hear about. I don't care about the guy on the news and their interpretation of tariffs. I want to hear about Justin's interpretation of tariffs.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
This has always frustrated me about in some ways that aperture metaphor is so good. Our industry is like, it felt like for a long time people were like, well, this has nothing to do with politics, for example. And I was always like, this has everything to do with politics. Like the stock market going way down and then the stock market shooting straight back up.
Yeah.
All of that percolates down through the economy and affects us, you know?
Yeah.
Even like my willingness to travel to the US right now. I just went for a conference and there's a lot of Canadians that are like not super excited to go through airport security right now. We don't feel super welcome. The Canadian government just like issued warning, like this is the border control can ask you really deep questions. They can search your devices, like,
where
you know,
been, all that stuff. Yeah.
That's life. That's the world we live in.
Yes.
And it
Family,
really upset me, like, especially with Section 174. It was like, clearly this is a case where what's happening in DC actually really affects software businesses. Like,
a little bit more of a whole self approach into the podcast as opposed to, and
I totally agree with you, Jordan, about like, I'm always interested to hear what our people think about other things.
Yes, agree.
Whether it's the world,
yes,
whether it's politics,
yes.
where you're from, your taste in music, what are you reading, what are you watching,
travel, why
travel.
you take certain types of vacations,
Yeah.
how you're raising your kids.
And I like the idea of opening up, like widening up the range of topics, because it's like, if you're not into it, skip it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not into whatever we're talking about today, like maybe you'll be into something next week. But like and I think we actually saw that in the numbers in Bootstrap Web. For better or worse, I actually liked this aspect of Bootstrap Web, which was like every time I looked at the numbers, which was probably like once a year, you know, I would notice like it's the same exact number of listeners. Every single episode gets like crazy, like the exact number of listeners, and it never grew. It was the same number.
We were just
for
hanging
years.
out with our people.
We found our people, and this is all the people that are going to find us interesting, and there's no one else who is going to find this type of business talk interesting. You know?
Yeah. I think this is an underrated point, though, which is, I mean, everybody theoretically likes big numbers and for the numbers to be going up, but there's something about having the right people listen. And I honestly felt like this with every podcast I've ever started. Like, none of my stuff is ever really like I don't have a massive YouTube channel. I don't have a massive podcast listenership. I don't have a massive email list. It's like 7,000 people. I don't have, what was I going to say? Email?
What, Twitter followers, Instagram?
Even Twitter. Yeah. Like, I dedicated so much of my life to that and put my best effort in it, and I got it to 40,000. And, you know, Adam Wathan joins and gets to 500,000. Like, I don't know what he's at, but, you know, I was never that level. Mm-hmm. But the difference was the people who were paying attention really had influence and gravity, and they were the right people for me to be in conversation with.
100%.
And I think that's like, what more could you want? You know, I've told stories from Bootstrapped Web. Like I talked about Jordan's move from Portland to Chicago a lot because I have lots of friends who were in Portland who also moved. And that's just a story that has reverberated around a bunch of different conversations. And I think people underestimate the value of that. Like, you wrote a blog post and 500 people saw it, but if Heaton Shaw saw it and now he's talking about it in all of his circles, that matters, you know?
That's exactly right. That's exactly the same experience that I've had with podcasting for so many years. I feel like my whole career, I've been so frustrated with marketing in general and not figuring out the right, like a repeatable marketing channel that can just grow customers. But I firmly believe that, like, the best success that I've ever had in marketing and sales for all of my products, going back to the beginning through today, has been either direct or an indirect result of the podcast. And it's so impossible to even connect those dots, but I know that they're there exactly for what you were saying, because I have an even tighter audience than you do, Justin. But it's like the people who are tuning in, especially the ones tuning in every single week or to every single newsletter.
Yeah.
Like, these are well-connected people who are invested in what I'm working on, or my story, or the people that I'm talking to, and good things happen, you know. And like, hasn't been a breakout success, but I've had some pretty great wins and invitations and opportunities come up just for being out there and people following along. Like, that's what a podcast is. So like, going back to Jordan, what you're starting up with a new podcast, it's like, just make it interesting and authentic, and you're going to attract your people, and like ... good things come from that, you know?
Yes.
All right, have you changed? It's interesting though, Jordan, because it feels like you have a different. One thing I've always enjoyed about you is that you're like, you went and raised money. You are thinking bigger. You are kind of naturally, I think, more of a salesperson than I am. And I've always appreciated that perspective of, like, sure, all of us bootstrappers are over here, and of course, like, we're like, yeah, podcast, small aperture, get in the room with the right people. But you've, like, do you still believe that, or are the experiments you've run at CartHook and then now Rosie with advertising and other things, like, is there stuff you're experimenting with that we're not seeing? Like, some of those, you know, that casting a wider net is been useful or helpful? Like, what are you seeing in that sense?
I think it's an ongoing challenge for me and for most people, that almost all of our limits are just inside of our own head.
Yeah.
And trying to push past those is, at least for me, it's conscious effort. And oftentimes when you hear me say things that feel like I'm going bigger, I'm half convincing myself.
Yeah.
And that, I think that comes from peers who you admire.
Yeah.
I talk to my brothers a lot. They're both entrepreneurs, and we try to push each other to think bigger. My investors, and understanding their worldview.
Yeah. What's an example of something your investors have said to you that, like, what are they pushing you to do right now with Rosie?
So one of the most useful things that that our lead investor, who's on our board, this guy named Hyun from March Capital, one of the most useful things he does is, it's like, when there's bad news or challenges, it's support. But as soon as there's good news, it's awesome. How do we double? How do we 10x? How do we go faster? How do we take those assumptions that look great? How do we blow those out of the water?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's this mindset of, if it's working, like, do not take your foot off the gas. Figure out how to put 3 more feet on the gas.
Yeah, I've been thinking about you a lot lately, because I've been reflecting about the podcast industry when we entered in 2018. And the way I explain it is, like, the market was like this size, quite small. And then suddenly, because of all these cultural influences, the Serial podcast, the New York Times just started talking about podcasting. The awareness of podcasting just went, but the market was still this small. And so when we entered, we were growing like, 50% month over month. It was just like, bam, bam, bam. And in retrospect, now I realized we were growing fast because there was all of this green space that had been created around the old market that nobody really realized. And in retrospect, I wish I had an investor or an advisor that was like, double down, spend like thousands of dollars on ads. Like, you don't realize you need to gobble up as much of this market share as you can.
You'll be happy a few years from now that you did.
And if you look at like almost any success, most of it happens, like most of their market share is when they entered the market and there was just a bunch of green space and they just gobbled it up faster than everybody else. So like Netflix, how did Netflix beat everybody else? They entered the streaming market and people didn't realize like everyone was getting cable and fast internet. So the market had gone bigger, but the streaming market just seems so small at the time. But to double down in that time and just gobble up market share while you can get it, then when Disney entered later, they can't catch up. No matter, like, it's Netflix has this I don't know, this foundation or this
they took a spot
install
in the market
base,
and their position is solid. Like they've been in a good place, and it's really hard to remove someone once they exist in people's minds a certain way.
Yeah.
And I mean the timing of like the change in the world or the landscape. I mean, when there was Blockbuster and then there was Netflix. Like, it's just a change, and they were, you know.
Yeah, and you're kind of swinging for that right now. Like, do you feel like that's the moment that Rosie is in?
Yeah. So what you're describing is what I think about all day, and it is connected to certain decisions around funding. So I think that's definitely true. One of the challenges I wanted to take on by raising more money is forcing myself to think bigger.
Yeah.
So my investors want a very different outcome than I would want if I didn't raise money. Mm-hmm. It's not that they would look down on or they don't care or they would be unhappy or something, but their actual goal is very, very different. And that has helped me basically, deal with the truth. Okay, I took money. Like I bought into this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go change up everything around the trajectory and the goals in the middle of it. And that definitely has led to, Rally, if it was a bootstrap business, you would be happy with the revenue.
Yeah. This is the second company you started after CartHook.
Yes.
That you then pivoted into Hey Rosie. So Rally was a shopping cart, like
third-party checkout.
Yeah, and then you were like, this doesn't seem to gaining traction. We're gonna completely change markets to an AI voice answering service. Is that correct? Yeah.
Seems like a random change, but it's exactly what you're talking about. Like going back to the podcast thing, it's like finding that space that is blowing up or in the process of riding that wave, whereas the cart thing was just sort of the timing just wasn't quite there.
That's right. That's exactly. So what you're talking to connect it back, my take on the AI voice market is everyone's getting into position.
Yeah.
But what I visualize in my head is that there's this big dam made of skepticism, and there is an ocean on the other side of the dam.
Yeah.
And right now, the only water coming over the top are the early adopters. And over time, that dam gets lower as the skepticism and belief and word of mouth and commonality and mainstreaming of your phone being answered by an AI improves. And eventually the dam breaks. And at that point in time, you need to be in position or you're going to be very, very late.
Yeah.
So Rosie is an attempt to sit on the other side of the dam and establish our position and say, when the dam breaks, we are going to be ready.
Dude, that is such a good metaphor.
Good. Jordan, I'm curious to know your thinking right now this year about why this is important to you, starting a podcast, like growing a presence on Twitter. Maybe you can talk a bit more about that.
I've noticed you posting on LinkedIn more often too.
Posting on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Given the business model that you're in and the funding structure and all that,
okay. So
is it a personal thing? Like it's just fun and it's natural, authentic, or is it actually like a business decision?
No, strategy. It's executing on the marketing strategy or campaign. Okay. So any business like ours, if you find a distribution channel that works, you should be happy. We found one early on in our advertising and it works well. Great. So part of me is like, ignore everything else and double down on that. Yes, but advertising as a channel specifically is a little dangerous because you have to buy every customer. So it would be healthier if over time the percentage of customers that come in through our paid ads goes down or moves toward 50-50, something of a healthier mix.
Yeah.
Because when I look at my projections and I see monthly spend on ads, monthly spend, monthly spend, monthly spend, if I remove that monthly spend or significantly decrease it in the future, then the profitability and all the happiness and stability comes into play.
Yeah.
So I look at advertising, like, yes, I will buy customers because we have money in the bank from VCs and we should be buying customers to grow fast.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of where it starts. What other channels do we want? So SEO. SEO is odd. It's a bit like a set it and forget channel, right? You hire a good SEO team, cost you $10,000 a month, and they just do their thing for a year.
Yeah.
And we connected them with the writer, so they just have their own department in our company, basically.
Yeah.
They're managing the writers, they're publishing stuff to the blog, they're doing the SEO thing. And I'm like, as soon as that's set, it's not that I forget about it. I check in and we get the weekly calls and the monthly and all this other stuff, but there's no effort.
Yeah.
So once you set that up, I said, okay, cool, that's set, and that'll pay off in 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
So then what else? So I wanted organic content. And then I went through a little bit of a journey on what type of organic content needs to come from a company like ours. I generally think every day that we don't post things on social channels is a day wasted. What are we doing? The more people hear about us, the more we grow. Let's make sure people hear about us. Okay.
Yeah.
So then I make a decision, all right, let's get organic content. And then the question is, what type of organic content? So the first thing I look into is from the company. And eventually it dawns on me, you know what content I pay attention to? Anything other than from a company.
Not from a company.
No, exactly. It's
gotta be a
think about
person.
individual people.
Yeah.
So then I say to myself, all right, I guess it's got to come from me. And then I get in. Well, I actually looked into options on like hiring a creator, and then that's the face of your company. And I just determined, you know what, it's got to be from me. That's the healthiest thing. And then you start to figure out, okay, how am I going to create a lot of content when I don't naturally create a lot of content?
Yeah.
So I found a very interesting company that posts organic content from the founder point of view.
Okay.
So I haven't logged in. I haven't gone onto LinkedIn, very much at all. But you're seeing me post a lot. That is a service.
Are they writing your content for you?
Yes.
Wow. Oh,
So
interesting.
they do interviews. They understand me. They listen to podcasts like this. That's part of why I went on to a bunch of podcasts. They get to know you. They get to know what's important to you, what your values are, how you talk, what your limits are, what you don't like to say, what is your personality versus
I
isn't.
really like this mod. Maybe I know.
Super interesting.
Somebody else might be using the same service or a similar one. And
I've
I've seen this.
So yeah, his company, that agency, is blowing up. If anyone wants the name, just hit me up. I'm happy to talk about it. And
I love that model though of like,
dude, they're doing so
you
awesome.
like the subject matter expert, like sit down. I assume it's like on video or something for like an hour, and then somebody else can like a human can like take it and create and publish all the other stuff. I assume there's some AI involved, but I want to hear more.
There's a whole bunch of stuff involved. So we're going to get to the podcast, but we're on the way there.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's when I make that decision, I make it like cognitively. I'm like, yes, that is the right thing for the business. And then emotionally, I'm like, I'm gonna die from cringe if I turn into like a thread boy with like these embarrassing threads, right? So then I'm like, yo, I got to make this good,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna die from embarrassment every day.
Yeah.
And so they have a great process where they're coming up with a bunch of content, and then it goes into a Notion doc, and then I edit and approve.
Nice.
So I have a filter. It's almost like they give you a bunch of raw material that's like 95% done, and you go, oh, that sounds great. Approve? Or I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't put it this way. This isn't my style. Let me change this. And it's so much easier to edit a document than it is to create a document. So that works. And then
How much work is that? The editing process? Is it like
For
is
me?
it literally just like yes, 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 no, no, yes, yes, done,
I
or is
think
it
it's
like
about-
are you working?
it's an hour of work for 2 weeks of content. So it's not much.
Wow.
But I am focused, and I have 30 different individual posts, and I just open it up, I read it, I make changes, I make comments, and I hit approve or edit or whatever else. Okay.
And then where's all that? Maybe stepping back a step in the process. What's the original source? of all
conversations with me, looking at the company. That's kind of part of their special sauce that I don't really know. So, interviews with me, I probably spend about 2 hours talking about me, and it's like, what's important to you? What things do you believe that most people don't? How did you come up with the business? Who gets the most out of it? Can you give us an example of a transformation before using the product and after? Just all the right questions.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. I've been thinking so much about this just today because I heard about a similar company, maybe the same one. And like, how can I, as a bootstrapper and hacker, like hack this together without hiring the expensive agency,
Yeah.
But my question is also around how, I guess there's like an iteration process of like, they're a little bit far off and then they get closer and closer to your voice. And,
yeah. We'll get to know you over the next few months.
What about like timeliness? So like, there's probably like evergreen stuff, but then like, what if it's like, I want to have a bunch of posts about something this week.
Okay, so that was really important to me because one of the key pieces of value in publishing every day is product updates.
Yeah.
Feature announcements. Look at this new thing. And so there's like basically another entry point into the same stream. So if we go to them and we say, we are releasing live call transfers this week, I'll make a video, and then they say, cool, we'll write 3 or 4 posts about it. And we'll take the videos and we'll add it to your stream, and it'll be published, a few days later, which I think is really, really important. And a lot of that we can also post from the company because that makes sense for the company. And then everything else from the company, you don't want the company profiles to just be totally dormant. And so the company basically just retweets my stuff.
Yeah.
But like if there's a feature announcement, it can come from the company, and then maybe I'm going to retweet the company and maybe add a little bit of color to it.
I like that model, like the product updates from the company, and then you like retweet it or comment on it.
Right.
Like check
so excited for this to get out. Here's how people are using it. How would you use it, type of thing.
Again, I'm thinking through like the process of how all this, like the mechanics of this. What is the final output? It sounds like there's some LinkedIn messages. There's X, like Twitter. Like is there any video content going out? Like how does this all end up being published?
So you depending on what package you want and whatever else, so what's important to your ICP. I don't log into Facebook anymore, but my ICP is all over Facebook. Mm-hmm. So they created a new profile page for me on Facebook, and so it's like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And I told them, I personally live on Twitter, and that is where I'm most sensitive to cringe.
Right.
Because that represents me, like real me, not like businessy me on LinkedIn, where I'm like, basically just doing it for the business. And so I can decide this is cool, but not for Twitter. This is cool for the other platforms, but I don't want this on Twitter. This is too whatever. Well, for whatever reason, I don't want it.
So on those 3 platforms, the final post, is it always text-based or like images? Or
Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. And this now we're at the podcast. Mm-hmm. I thought the best thing that I can do to make the content good is to be the source of the content. Mm-hmm. And so a weekly podcast is intended to serve as the foundation of content. Here is a whole conversation, and it includes business stuff, personal stuff, snippets, ideas, and that's just raw material for them to turn into posts and then take video clips and then all of a sudden introduce the video element of the content. And so the goal of the podcast, I guess the secondary goal of the podcast, is to provide a constant stream of content for this service that then takes it and amplifies it.
This is, Justin, you've been doing this with this podcast a few times where you'll take a clip of something we talked about and it like fits nicely into a larger thought piece that you wrote, I've been wanting to do the same thing, but I don't have the process or the time to make that happen. Like I think a challenge that I've been having lately with content is I feel like the best possible, like highest caliber content that I could potentially do is like a written article that I spend several hours thinking about and editing and sending out to my list. But I only get the time or energy to do that maybe once every 2 months at this point. Like I can't do it weekly. There's just no way.
You know what's making me rethink some of this? There's a few schools of thought here. Like Jason Fried is like, I only post my own stuff. I don't have any da-da-da.
Yep.
But what Jordan's experience is reminding me of, and I'm starting to think about this more, is just I produce so much content every week that really nothing gets done with it. So I do a pretty regular podcast with another guy on the podcast industry. I do this panel one. And then I'm also just sometimes recording video for other stuff. All of that stuff could get turned into posts, could get turned into blog posts, could get turned into whatever. And this week, while I was in Chicago, Kit is opening up a new studio there. So Nathan Barry said, hey, I'm flying to Chicago. Why don't I have you at the studio and then we'll do an interview? And he has an assistant. And watching him and his assistant work, I'm like, this is how he's posting so much content. Mm-hmm. His assistant just knows they are in lockstep with him. They understand his brain, they understand his voice, they understand content, everything. And I watch them interact, you should say this, Nathan, you should not say this. And it's just like having this other person who understands your voice and everything like that. And
like a producer. It's like a
producer, but
director,
what Jordan has is kind of plays that role as well.
It's like a multiplier.
It's a multiplier to think. I mean, the other thing I like writing. I'm not actually a very good writer. There's people far better than me. And a few times in my life, I've sat down with an editor and I'll just be like, okay, I've got all this stuff in my head. And they'll be like, dude, we need to organize these thoughts in a way that makes sense. Justin, you are too all over the place. And so part of me is wondering, like, to have something like this, that's easy and fun. It is easy and fun for all of us to get on microphones and someone say, hey, Justin, what do you think about this? And I can just go. But then to have someone come back afterwards and synthesize that for me and give me some stuff, AI can do an okay job at it, but to have like a human or an agency.
Like a human I mean, Justin, your pieces, I read them most of the time, and the thing that sticks out to me, besides like whatever idea it is that you're sharing, is I know how much time and effort goes behind the scenes on something like this, even just the week, because it's like people can read it. Maybe it's only like 700 words, like not very long. But I know that like especially when you see things like you're pulling examples from other people or something that someone else said, you had to find that and notice it and bookmark it and then comment on it and then write it and edit it and get it out to the list. And like, there are so many, like that's multiple hours of work. I mean, I'm sure you have a faster process at this point, but like,
I don't.
Like for
I
me,
wish people could see my process. My process is so shitty. Like I'm with.
And then sometimes you do it on video.
Right?
Like,
I'm terrible at that stuff.
I'm doing a lot of YouTube content right now, and anytime I'm doing YouTube or written content, I'm only actually physically able to produce what directly comes out of me or my current work. I don't have the extra time and bandwidth to pull a clip from here and edit that in and comment on this or find 3 supporting examples of that. Like I just can't. I'm not I can't spend all week on this.
How much does this cost, Jordan? Can you say how much it costs?
All in everything, it's less than $10K a month.
See, my only thought there is, because this service sounds awesome. My only thought there is like, now I'm thinking about the Nathan Barry assistant angle, and it's like, if you could hire somebody long term.
You're talking about a salary, so it's like it's not.
So hire somebody long term that just like they understand Jordan, they understand his worldview.
But I didn't. My true north in it was marketing activity.
Yeah.
How much marketing activity per unit of effort from me can we create? And I am a horror show of procrastination and disorganization and slacking, and I need T-ball. I need you to set the little ball up on the tee, and I walk up for an hour, and I take a swing, and I walk away, and then I just want all this marketing activity to be generated from that.
Yeah.
And maybe this is like this combination of thinking bigger, raising money, also like being okay with not doing everything myself mix.
I want to tell you.
I look at SEO is the same way. I look at this the same way. I'm like, how do I do as little work as possible for as much stuff to come out of it as possible?
Yeah.
I want to get both of your takes on this because where my brain is going, I'm like the bootstrapper brain, right? Like, like how do I do this without paying a high-priced like full-time salary or hiring an expensive agency?
Yeah.
That's just not in the mix for me, right? But what I can swing is like what I am working with a video editor for my YouTube channel. You know, it's low four figures, you know, retainer, but like that saves me a lot of time for. I am able to just record, drop it in Dropbox, and he does the editing and publishes. And he's really good, you know, a little bit as a producer. Like he can give me notes on like that was really good. Maybe you can make the intro a little bit tighter, this and that, and he does. But there's still a wide gap between something like that and like a true content editor producer who can say like, hey, this is a really good theme for you to cover, or there's a conversation in our industry going on over here. Maybe you should do a topic around this or that, or, you know, or like this type of angle really resonates with our target audience. Like, and that's where I start to think about AI, right? Like, if I can, again, as like the bootstrapper brain thinking like, okay, what does it take for me to do what you do, Jordan? Like, just record once a week, an hour of raw material. Maybe I'm responding to some predefined prompts that me and an AI come up with, and then I do have an assistant, like a human, to help with the logistics of like taking these pieces and editing and publishing to these channels. Like that stuff is just process that anyone can do. But then there's that middle layer of like curating examples and maybe building up a history of themes and topics and what resonates with the target audience, what resonates with me. And I feel like that's where something in AI can be put together. And I've been thinking a lot about that, you know.
I almost put quality on the other end of quantity. I was like, how do I just start doing this?
Yeah.
I will figure out exactly what the podcast should be, exactly what my unique version of content needs to be. Like, I often find an enormous like serotonin release of just signing the contract, just committing.
Yeah.
And just saying, yes, I decided I want to do this. I signed the contract. I'm going to pay. I get this sense of relief. Okay, it's going to get done. It's not going to just be on my list and maybe I'll do this and maybe it'll happen in the future. And all, you know, making it amazing feels like it's on the other side of getting started. So you know, because really dangerous to like sit around and be like, how do I nail the exact podcast that's going to represent me? It's like, unlikely to happen. 6 months from today, I'll be a lot better at that.
It's going to get better and better.
Yeah.
And you can see that I'm just browsing through your LinkedIn posts here. And, you know, some of them have like a couple likes, but some of them have like 65 likes, 27 comments. And it's interesting.
I should log
some
in.
of these insights. What's that?
Maybe I should log in and check that.
Some of these insights you can't get until you get volume. Like you've done a bunch of posts and now they're out there and you can compare and contrast and go, okay, well, wow, this one really hit. It resonated, and this one, for whatever reason, didn't. And it also looks like they're posting at different times and things like that too.
And it'll compound, right?
Yeah.
The real value is in posting those for 6 months straight. And you know who's never going to do that? Me. I'll never, ever will I do that. But
how many weeks has it been since like this has been active?
Oh, like 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Like just a few
totally
weeks.
new.
Yeah. So we've kind of gone through one entire cycle of posts and then editing and approval. And now as this week starts to run out, I'll get the next set and we'll be like a week or two ahead of time.
You know the other advantage of putting out volume? I mean, there's definitely a balance here. Like even you have a bar for like, this can't be too cringy. I've got to approve it. But back to your question, Brian, as a bootstrapper, one thing I've really relied on, and I should rely on more, is my producer is like me messaging Adam Wathan, who I know will just criticize me and say, hey, dude, like, what do you think about this? And he'll be like, you got to change this. This is dumb.
Sure.
This is cringy, whatever.
Yeah.
And that I think for bootstrappers, our secret weapon, our number one secret weapon, I think, is network. It's all about people. It's like, I got to get the word out about this. I'm DMing a bunch of people. I need someone to help with my product hunt launch. I'm DMing a bunch of people. This launch is really important to me, and I want people to understand that. I'm handwriting 100 emails, sending it to everybody saying, I've just started this company called Transistor. If you have a podcast, I would really appreciate it if you joined us and you talked about it. Like, that's our secret weapon. And being able to get advice from people who have good taste, who aren't afraid to say, and who aren't afraid, sometimes that people just popping out of nowhere and giving you unsolicited advice is hard.
Yeah.
But I would almost always rather that people give me that unsolicited advice if they're a friend. I don't generally like it from strangers.
General public, no thanks.
But a friend who's like, hey, dude, just so you know,
Sure.
I wouldn't say that, or I wouldn't do that, or this could be improved. I think that's the underrated weapon. And what really distinguishes a successful indie hacker who's just hacking alone in their basement and doesn't talk to anybody with someone who's going to MicroConf, who's going to events, who's
how many
meeting up with
are rooting
people.
for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of want to take the other side of that. Just
Me too.
because this is the thing, and I've been thinking a lot about this over the past year or so. I'm so done and over the idea of trying to rely on friends and my direct following to help me boost visibility in my stuff. And it is a huge help. It is a huge benefit for sure. And it, it's nice when it happens. But I'm in this mode now where it's I want to just have good, solid, quality relationships with friends, and I do want to gain exposure with content that I produce. But I'm willing to leave that up to the algorithms at this point.
Yeah,
that's why I'm leaning so hard into YouTube at this point. I really don't even care what happens on X and Blue Sky. That's for me and my buds, you know. But YouTube is post it. I'm constantly thinking now about how can I get better and improve my game on YouTube so that the algorithm does a better job of delivering my stuff to total strangers, because it is actually working. It's not like a rocket ship right now. Nothing is really blowing up for me there. But I am actually getting direct leads for instrumental components, total strangers who are watching my videos about it and going to my form, filling out a large survey, and replying to my emails about it. And they do not listen to this podcast. They don't follow me on Twitter. It's just the algorithm. So if I can, I don't know how to multiply that. I don't know how to double down on that other than keep doing YouTube videos and hope that eventually a couple of them are going to hit and start to blow up. But that is where I start to think about how can I do something like that where I'm spending an hour or two on a big thought piece, whether it's just raw material into a camera, and then cut that into have someone or an AI or automation or a combination of all that to really distribute. And I mean, the other thing is a newsletter and a written form, which is I haven't done much of that anymore because I just don't have the energy. But
okay, so Jordan, what is your take similar? What was your take on that?
So the word that came to mind was insular, and I think that the danger in indie hackers and people on Twitter is if their audience is also their customer base, and that can be really challenging because you kind of are on stage at all times.
Yeah,
and that can feel pretty limiting. My nightmare was, Twitter world in the time of Shopify and Carthook, where you were performing and everything was an act of marketing. It was really hard to be authentic.
Yeah.
And you couldn't help yourself but go toward this bragging thing because that is what attracts people. And I really like it much, much more when I think of people on Twitter and that network as your team.
Yeah.
And then you get pushed out on stage and you're talking to total strangers. You're talking to the market.
Yeah.
And so right now, at least with this business, that's really easy because our customers have nothing to do with our network of peers.
Yes. Yeah, I think maybe my examples misled you guys a little bit there. That to me, the advantage of the network. This just happened to me while I was in Chicago. So I'm talking to my buddy Steven Robles, who makes YouTube videos. He's quite good at it, and I'm like, dude, what do I need to do better on YouTube? And he instantly had an answer for me. He's like, your first 10 seconds suck. Like, it's just one talking head. There's no B-roll. It's like that one video you did about Twitter and Blue Sky. Like, that one kind of blew up. But it should be like little intro and then B-roll of you scrolling Blue Sky. And then, like, he had specific advice to give me. And
that's the same feedback I get from my editor.
We
got to make the intro tighter.
And this is the advantage of a network is you can get this expertise for free or very low cost. Is you just have to ask, hey Adam, why do my my social media posts suck? And he'll be like, because you're posting about this. Like you so it's that unfiltered friendship advice from people who have taste that I think can be leveraged. And it can also be helpful for boosting stuff too. But to me, it's getting that advice that's like,
it helps you elevate. I don't think we actually disagree at all. The network is a huge advantage for
I really think that they're like some of my favorite content that I consume, or I should say even like content creators are the ones who have these like deep dive, like really like meaty pieces of content. You know, like I just caught another one of Rand Fishkin's pieces where, you know, for many years he's done like the whiteboard thing. I think now he has like a digital version of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, just looking at that, like it's just like so much thought and like quality and originality went into this piece.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times all it takes is one of those pieces to hit with even just a small number of people, and then those people are going to return to you for a long period of time, just off of the success of that first one.
Yeah,
you know. So like I really don't care if like a single thing goes viral or does really huge numbers, but I have seen in my own audience over the years. I mean, and we've seen this with Bootstrapped Web, is that like once someone, it's hard to hook someone in the beginning, but once they are hooked, they're with you.
Yeah, you don't need
for a long
that
period of
many
time.
Like amazing entry points. You're right, like a great video or two as an entry point that lives on for years, and then they dip into your current stream. But I want to take this in a different direction. We are deep in on content right now. Content is not the goal. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So where we started was content as marketing activity.
Yeah.
So if I could do absolutely no content at all, I would do none.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think about this all the time. I see like really successful people on Twitter like talking about nonsense or fighting with people, and I'm like, I think maybe I would disappear.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you'd hear a lot less from me the more successful things got.
Yeah.
Now there is like a love of the game, and I really appreciate that side of content. People where it's not business focused. In many ways, this iteration or this evolution toward what I want the podcast to be is in that direction.
Yeah.
I don't want it to just be marketing. Otherwise, I would just interview people in our ICP every week and post it out to our newsletter and say, look how this painter went from $1 to $5 million over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. I think there's enough inside of these more casual conversations that you can clip them and take ideas. And if you're talking about business, there's topics that you're going to touch on anyway.
Yeah. By the way, when Jordan says ICP, he does not mean Insane Clown Posse.
No, I don't know what's going on in your audience.
Be awesome.
that they assume it's Insane Clown Posse. I'm talking about ideal customer profile. Okay? No, but the people who pay us.
You've just dropped that a few times. I was like, okay, ICP. Oh, that must mean...
It must mean insane.
Sorry,
it must be...
We think about it a lot because given, I think everyone's industry and niche and whatever else, we have to be really deliberate.
Yeah.
at least I am taking an opinionated stance to our ideal customer profile.
Yeah.
We are purposely very horizontal, which is the opposite advice that most of us would give someone going into a software product. It would not be go after everybody in the market.
Yeah.
It would be find your niche, serve them, crush it for them.
Yeah.
Think about expanding later. Probably you'll find that this niche is big enough for you to build a great business in and of itself.
Yeah.
And we are specifically not doing that.
Yeah.
And so ICP for us, or at least for me, is like this concept that really, really matters. At least for me, when I say it, usually people say ideal customer profile in order to narrow.
Yeah.
And for me, it's actually very, very wide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I derailed you because you said content is not the end goal. So you're leading to something, and then I derailed you.
I mean, I guess we're leading to this, right?
Yeah.
Customers are the goal, and the market, and attention in the market. What I think about a lot these days is these AI. AI is pretty weird right now in the market, and there's a ton of opportunity. And I think a lot about content writing as an AI niche. If you think back a few years ago, we have several friends in our networks that got into AI content writing as a service, and they went through a pretty brutal cycle where if you're early, the search starts to pick up and everyone starts to be interested in it. You're in a good spot. You can grow incredibly fast. Think about the cycles just feel like they've shortened now. So think about Lovable, Bolt, these companies that are, flying. The speed is insane.
Yeah.
But the back end of that cycle, where everyone comes into the market, the innovation is kind of gone and it's standardized. Then quality goes through the roof because it's so good, and price goes through the floor because it's so cheap.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of like right back where you started. You're like, okay, now I no longer have this key insight that's making us grow.
Yeah.
And that scares me.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how we avoid that vicious cycle. My answer to it is an incredibly non-technical audience. That's
I really think like the most interesting topic area for you, Jordan, to be covering is like humanizing AI, right? Like, hey, general public, you're hearing these things about AI on TV and on random podcasts, but you don't ever really touch it yourself. I don't know. Let's make it interesting. Let's make it funny. Let's make it informative. Like, this is how to think about it. This is what you can do with it. And, and I'm thinking about, I feel like AI as the topic, like the thing to talk about is AI. I think it's interesting across the board. Like it's something I'm thinking a lot about in the types of topics that I'm coming up with. Like the product that I'm about to launch is it's components for Rails, but like why would you even need that if you can use AI to help you code faster? But I actually am finding in the apps that I'm building that like it's a perfect match if you're building with AI. Like building with components and building with AI is a perfect match.
Yeah.
And like that's a topic to try to educate the market about, right? Because it's like AI needs to read a conventional code base. This gives you conventional components, like right there.
What scares me there is the speed of change.
Yeah.
So I think back to an investor conversation I had very, very early on with CartHook when we had just pivoted to the checkout, and I didn't end up taking money from these guys. I didn't particularly like them. I don't think they liked me. But one of them asked a really, really good question that stuck with me. And he said, this sounds like you've built a great product around the checkout. People are using it. They're paying you. They make more money when they use it. Everything is good. But what do you do if the checkout no longer exists in the future? Everything you're doing is predicated on this concept of I add something to the cart, and then I go to the checkout, and then I buy something, and I move on. What if that gets resolved in a different way? I go from the product page and I say, this is me through my browser extension, and my address, and I don't even go to a checkout page. So I think about that a lot, for ourselves now included. Okay, right now people are calling on the phone. You have a human picking up the phone, dialing a number, and then Rosie picks up on the other end. Amazing. What if the human stops calling? What if What if it's their AI from their iPhone that Apple releases in 2 years, and it just says, I want to talk to this business, set up an appointment for me, and they don't call at all. So the danger of being like blown out of the water because you're no longer relevant is so scary. Whatever you're working on right now is like a moment in time that you're making your assumptions based on right now. But
I still think that
huge things keep coming out and just running over all these assumptions.
I hear what you're saying, but I still think that it's better to build a business now based on customer behavior now, so that you can get into position into like now you are an active player who has a customer base, and then when the customer base changes, you can pivot in whatever direction you need to, rather than trying to invent what the thing 5 years, 10 years from now is going to be but now. Scary. Like that, it just won't be.
You just think about businesses like Squarespace, incredible business, like maybe irrelevant in 3 years.
Oh, interesting.
You know, you kind of can't tell with a lot of these things.
But so what's your answer to that with Rosie? So what if people stop calling? What are you doing right now about that?
So a few things. One, go as fast as possible is almost like the universal answer to all this stuff.
Yeah.
What I like the idea of is getting in and then adding value and increasing the amount of value that you add to the customer while keeping the price the same. So it's like, come into our product at $49, and what we give you for $49 a month right now is 1/10 of what we give you 12 months from today.
Yeah.
So I feel like this stack of value of like, we'll do SMS and outbound calls and like requesting a review after the appointment, like all this stuff. You just have to keep jamming it into the same price point. So it's overwhelming value. And the second thing is I think the cycles between raising money or starting a business and the exit need to shorten.
Yeah.
I think it's really dangerous to be like, I'm just going to sit on this for 10 years and build a great business. That was a great plan a few years ago, and now the cycles might be fast enough, the innovation kind of dangerous enough and dramatic enough that if you get a chance to sell in year 3, you should think about it very differently than if it was a few years ago and you say, all the value is about to happen between years 3 and 10. I'm not sure that's the case.
That what you just said is like in my head, like because the the dream of a bootstrap business is I'm going to build this thing, and it's going to be the accumulation of everything I've ever done, every person I've ever met, every advantage I have. I'm going to put my blood, sweat, and tears into this, and then I'm going to be like Peldy, and I'm just going to have balsamic for 20 years or whatever he's at, 15 years, and it's just going to be a great business forever. But the fear, which is always there, it's there for everybody, is like, what if the ground changes underneath me? What if stuff, and in the podcast industry, what we're thinking about is, what if every Gen Z kid now who's trained to use YouTube, I got 15, 17, 19, 22-year-old, they're all using YouTube. They're making eggs, watching YouTube, and I see their behavior. They'll slip the iPhone in their pocket and keep listening to it. If that behavior gets trained, and then we see Gen Z and Gen Alpha kind of go up and become adults, when they become adults, are they going to switch to Apple Podcasts and CarPlay in their car, or are they just going to keep listening to YouTube? And that's the fear, right? There's a balance of nobody knows the future. There's a world in which audio podcast hosting, my business, kills it over the next 10 years. That could exist. That could happen. It's hard to know what's going to happen. But then, you can never really sit still. It's kind of like, you guys have different mortgage rules in the US, but here, like, you can start on a variable rate mortgage, and then you can switch to a fixed rate mortgage, and then you renew every 5 years or whatever you've signed. And it's like, I signed at 1.96% variable, but I was just like checking the news every single day. It was on my brain every single day. I'm talking to my mortgage broker like every week. And then the first 5 times I asked him, should I lock in? He's like, no. The last time I asked him, he's like, actually, you should lock in. Locked in, mortgage rates went through the roof, and aren't I glad that I did that? So I don't know what the answer is here, because a part of me wants to be like, it's going to be fine.
For me, the answer is again to like take the opposite approach. I think from both of you and probably a lot of people. Like this year, I'm just still on this kick of like I'm not all in on anything. I've got a couple things. I'm working on one thing right now. I have no idea how long-lived this current product that I'm about to launch is going to be. Maybe it's just going to be another one in my portfolio. But like I'm just in this mindset of like just motion, just keep building and shipping, and that's why I am much more short-term focused. I am less concerned about like, am I investing in the thing that's going to be the thing 3-5 years from now? Like I don't care anymore. You know?
Yeah.
And I think I personally, this is just me. Again, like I'm always going to be like the voice of the bootstrapper, like company person over here. Like I feel like I got a little bit too caught up in that. Like let's try to swing for the fences 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm much more comfortable operating in like let's just build a thing, see what happens, and then see what the next step from there is going to be. Whether it's build another thing with that, or pivot to something new.
I mean, and there's example like Peter Levels is very much in some ways that guy. He's like short term. He's like, oh, AI is big. Okay, I'm just going to build a little thing. Oh, hey, I'm going to build a flight simulator. I'm going to build a whatever. Like he's just like, it seems like more short term thinking. And my guess is that his AI photo product is not doing the same revenue it was before.
But sure. I'm also still attracted to like a connected theme. That lives long term, and this kind of comes back to what we're talking about with content, right? Like I'm not about to do an app for restaurants, and then an app for painters, and then an app for accountants. I'm not interested in jumping around in industries like that. I am interested in like right now I'm on this kick of like building tools for builders, right? Software builders, right? And so like there should be some connection and theme in what I'm building and what I'm putting out in terms of content. But I'm not like all in on, I don't have to be all in on anything. I'm all in on the current thing, and then we'll see where I'm at 3-6 months from now.
Yeah, Jordan, when's your heart out? Are you?
I got a boogie. I got to go to an industry that's not going away, an ear, nose, and throat doctor. So,
dude, we got to have you come back because next time I just want to put this in your head. Next time I want to talk more about you're building up a customer, painters, tradespeople, all of that stuff. I'm so interested in that. I think that's actually a really interesting hedge, regardless of what technology you layer on top. Like, who has a list of tradespeople that are customers? If that's you now, there's just seems like all these cool possibilities that flow out of that. So, let's have you back.
Yeah, it's been a cool journey to selling to people that I, almost have nothing to do with, and just trying to find some insight around how to market to them and how to talk to them. One of the first things I did that worked was instead of traditional B2B marketing, I hired an ad agency that did direct-to-consumer ads. And I was like, I want you to treat this like a direct-to-consumer product. I want you to lead with, this is the pain, and doesn't that suck? And then I found this, and I no longer have that pain. Isn't that so much better? Basically, like, as if you were doing like a skincare product. So that really worked. Because it's B2B, but the people we're talking to in 1 to 10 person companies, I mean, they're on Instagram like you and I, just normal people.
Yeah.
A lot of these things and trying to figure out distribution with groups of people that you don't really know. We're very horizontal, so we don't necessarily have these easy themes. So I just wrote an investor update this morning, and at the very top, I said, the vibe in the company is, this is great. We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like. Okay, things are going up and to the right, great, but we have a lot of stuff to figure out.
Yeah.
Which is like, all right, now settle in for whatever amount of time to work on all these individual pieces and understand the customer and how do we onboard them. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about a lot of the stuff we're doing is kind of like counterproductive. Like I'm about to hire someone to basically just be on the phone, just onboard people on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
You should see our chat. Our intercom is like, call me.
Yeah.
Call me. Send.
I could definitely see, especially these offline businesses. I mean, I remember that from back in the day when I was doing Restaurant Engine websites for restaurants all the time. I would have no idea who the person is. Just one email, call me, subject line, and the number in the body. Nothing else.
That's right. That's right. We're learning a lot actually from owner.com.
Yeah.
Which is for restaurants and doing incredibly well. And if you go and look at their job ads, you can see how they are figuring out onboarding for restaurants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll have you back.